Well, now that you've already seen my worst of list, now it's finally time to unveil what I thought were the very best. Let's not waste any more time, let's jump right into the honorable mentions. In alphabetical order, they are The Babadook, the best horror film I've seen in years, Calvary, an Irish drama about the struggles of faith in the faithless world, Captain America the Winter Soldier, the first of two Marvel films that works both as a comic book superhero film and political spy thriller, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, an excellent continuation of the highly successful Chimpocalypse franchise, Edge of Tomorrow, the movie that everyone now regrets missing out on last summer, Frank, an incredibly strange yet thoroughly enjoyable musical dramedy, The Good Lie, an almost criminally underrated fact-based story about the Lost Boys of Sudan, Guardians of the Galaxy, the second Marvel outing that featured a great deal of memorable characters and a killer soundtrack, The Guest, a film that I believe to be a cult classic in the making, How to Train Your Dragon 2, a magnificent animated feature that may very well walk away with a gold statuette on Oscar night, more on that later, The Imitation Game, a riveting World War II drama fueled by a brilliant leading performance by Benedict Cumberbatch, the wonderful Disney adaptation of the Broadway musical Into the Woods, the deeply moving and strikingly relevant Martin Luther King biopic Selma, Studio Ghibli's beautifully heartbreaking The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, and finally X-Men Days of Future Past, the biggest breath of fresh air for this ongoing franchise and one that has me stoked for more to come. Now with those out of the way, here are my top 10 picks for the very best films of 2014. Number 10. The Raid 2. Of all the films released last year that supplied a great deal of high-quality action, nothing delivered more on-screen brutality or kicked as much ass than director Gareth Evans' follow-up to his underground cult hit, The Raid Redemption. Not only does this film expand upon the world we only saw a glimpse of in the original, it also manages to crank up the epic factor from 11 to 50 with some of the most insane fight choreography you'll ever see. I think it really says a lot when a martial arts movie from Indonesia is schooling even the most favorable of action fares like John Wick and Captain America. But then again, how could anyone compete with a film that features a guy using a concrete wall as his own personal punching bag? Sporting an onslaught of incredible cinematic visuals and memorable side characters in desperate need of their own spin-offs, The Raid 2 is about as hardcore as you could possibly get with contemporary action filmmaking. And if that's the case, I can't even begin to fathom what the filmmakers will do next for a third outing. Number 9. The Lego Movie. I don't give a rat's ass what the Academy thinks. This was the best animated feature of 2014, hands down. Sure, it may be the world's biggest toy commercial and makes no attempt whatsoever to hide the fact, but it's jam-packed with more creativity, originality, and even a little sentimental value thrown in than anything Hasbro has put up on the silver screen lately. For me, I'd proudly rank this film alongside the Toy Story movies for being an ingeniously funny and surprisingly heartwarming gateway towards the most imaginative part of anyone's lives, our childhood. Unless of course you played with Chia Pets as a kid, in which case, I feel sorry for you. It's everything the Academy voters are not, which is awesome. Number 8. Snowpiercer. Just when you start to think that there aren't enough original concepts being brought to the big screen, it's good to know that the South Koreans have us covered, much as the case with director Bong Joon-ho's post-apocalyptic thriller about a revolution that sparks on board an enormous train carrying the last of the human race. Part of what makes this movie so good is its unique way of jumping back and forth from being dramatically serious to over-the-top silly. One moment you're debating about the very existence of mankind, while the next you're left wondering, what the flying did I just witness? But despite its moments of confounding weirdness, this movie was still a great deal of fun, all due in large part to its dark sense of humor, unpredictable plot structure, and an amazing level of acting talents, which includes a scene-stealing performance by Tilda Swinton as one of the film's main central villains. Snowpiercer is one of the most surreal and intense science fiction films I've ever come across, and one that I think will be long remembered for years to come. Number 7. Nightcrawler. I love a good rags to riches story, especially one that centers on the scummiest person imaginable. Put an actor like Jake Gyllenhaal in said role, and you got yourself one of the year's best performances woven into one of the year's best films. Gyllenhaal is virtually unrecognizable as Lou Bloom, a man hell-bent on building a successful business for himself by filming gruesome crime scenes and selling the footage to local news stations. He's the type of guy that you could automatically tell is an untrustworthy individual, but at the same time, you can't help but be transfixed by his gaunt looks and cunning behavior, and the many clever ways he manages to turn certain situations around for his own greedy benefits. And that's a testament to both Gyllenhaal's incredible acting talents and the phenomenal screenwriting by Dan Gilroy, who also serves as the film's director. Nightcrawler is a fascinating portrait of both American capitalism and the shady underworld of TV news that's every bit as enticing as it is disturbing. Number 6. Gone Girl. I won't dwell on this for too long since 1, I already covered it in my initial review, and 2, I still believe that it's one of those rare films that's best viewed knowing very little about it. So instead, I'll just say that this is yet another masterwork from director David Fincher that works part ways as an intense psychological thriller, as well as a thought-provoking satire on the deceitful nature of both marriage and the media. Boasted by a terrific screenplay, an unforgettable score, and an outstanding cast ensemble, Gone Girl is a hauntingly diabolical film that continues to linger long after its chilling conclusion. Number 5. Boyhood. Bet you thought this would be my number 1 pick now, didn't ya? Well, even though it's not the best film of 2014 in my eyes, I was still completely enthralled by director Richard Linklater's most ambitious motion picture to date, which chronicles the life of a young boy and his family through the course of 12 years. The movie doesn't feature the traditional 3-act structure we've grown accustomed to seeing in most coming-of-age films, but instead, what we're presented with is a series of moments that help define the lives of these characters and how they grow and mature into a world full of responsibility and uncertainty. Under a deliberately paced 3-hour running time, Boyhood is about as authentic as a film could get to capturing everyday life, and Linklater somehow manages to make it just as compelling, if not more so, than the vast majority of wide releases we get every year. And for a film that took more than a decade to complete, that's quite a hefty accomplishment. But for those who think differently, here's my response.
What the f*** have you done lately?
Number 4. The Grand Budapest Hotel. Whether or not you're a fan of Wes Anderson's movies, one thing's definitely for sure, and that is, his body of work can easily be described as idiosyncratically symmetrical, to the point where you might wonder if Anderson hired Death the Kid as a cinematographer. But whatever the case, I still thought this was a well-crafted and charmingly funny addition to Anderson's filmography. His unique brand of style ties in beautifully within the world he creates for these offbeat characters, especially for Ralph Fiennes' role as Monsieur Gustave, whose sole purpose in life is maintaining a certain level of well-mannered sophistication even when he's on the run from the law or bedding a large assortment of rich elderly women. Plus, it's always a pleasure to see someone like Fiennes show off his comedic chops after devoting most of his entire career playing such villainous characters. For a movie as colorfully zany as this, I found it rather difficult to keep a straight face throughout, as I'm sure it must have been for even the least admirer of Anderson's work. And even though it does end on a morbidly bittersweet note, that still doesn't take away from what I believe to be Wes Anderson's most surprisingly accessible film to date, and one worth experiencing again and again. Number 3. Interstellar. Call me a Nolanite all you want, but in my humble opinion, Christopher Nolan has yet to make a bad movie. Well, at least one that he's directed. For years, he's shown us all complex dreamscapes, reverse storytelling, and a brand new take on the Batman mythos. Here, he takes us to infinity and beyond with a film so massive that not even the largest IMAX screen could contain. It's a film that works both as an epic scientific exploration of the cosmos, as well as a philosophical examination of the unlimited boundaries of one of the most powerful of human emotions, love. Supplied with a large assortment of great performances, gorgeous cinematography, and a magnificent Hans Zimmer score, Interstellar was one of the most challenging yet enlightening movie-going experiences I've had all year, but one that could only be topped by my next 2 picks. Number 2. Whiplash. Even though I wouldn't consider myself the biggest fan of jazz, my appreciation for the art form grew extensively after watching this movie, much in the same way Black Swan gave me a newfound respect for ballet. It's a story about the obsessed nature of wanting to become the best at what you could do, even at the cost of leaving behind your friends, family, and your dignity. And all could not have been better conveyed had it not been for the electrifying screen presence of the film's main stars, Miles Teller and J.K. Simmons. Both of these actors each delivered two of my favorite performances of the year separately, but whenever these two are up on screen together, it's like witnessing the acting equivalent of Nirvana, which is saying a lot considering the amount of scenery J.K. Simmons chews on. Sorry, did I say chew? I meant completely devour. His role as one of the scariest and psychologically abusive jazz instructors to ever walk the silver screen is one that will go down in cinema history as one of the greatest on-screen villains of all time. Kind of hard to believe that this is the same guy who voiced the character of Tenzin from The Legend of Korra. Imagine how that would have played out.
If you deliberately sabotage my band, I will f you like a pig. Or are you gonna be on my fucking time?
This film was so good that I almost had it tied with another film for Best Movie of the Year. But of course, I had to honor the sacred rule of Highlander, as there could be only one. And the #1 best film of 2014 is Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance. It wasn't the easiest decision picking this over something as great as Whiplash, but after revisiting this one again, I can safely conclude that not only is Birdman the year's most defining motion picture, it's one of my all-time favorites. There just seems to be a bit of everything crammed into this movie, whether it be its weirdly meta premise of a man wanting to be seen as a serious actor than an iconic superhero, to its central themes of fame, madness, and the ongoing battle of art versus commercialism. It's a film that uses its cinematic format to its fullest potential by telling a story that's not only original and innovative, but one that's bound to be studied and analyzed in film classes for the next few decades in terms of how to make a movie that's both artful and entertaining. It's just one of those films that continues to take my breath away every time I see it, and it definitely would have been the exact opposite had it not been for the insane amount of risk and dedication that these actors and filmmakers poured into it. I mean, it's one thing to make a film that pokes fun at the entertainment industry and the people who work in it, but to do it all in one long continuous take? That doesn't just take a certain level of skill, that takes some serious balls. Birdman is ultimately a great reminder of why we go to the movies in the first place, and that for me is what pushed this over the edge as the year's best movie. And there you have it, my top 10 best films of 2014 at long last. Did you agree or disagree? Leave a comment below and let us know what your favorite movies of last year were. Stay tuned for more movie reviews and special recaps in the near future, but until then, I'm the host, and here's to another year of great movies.